Hey everyone, Fire here. Today we're going to be discussing the future of Divine Orbs, as well as one of the largest economical shakeups in recent PoE history. During today's reveal stream, Chris announced that they're going to be shaking up Divine Orbs and Exalted Orbs. Although these currency items have always had the same drop rates, they are fundamentally pretty different, but GGG believes that Divine Orbs should be the currency item that are far more sought after by the PoE community, not Exalted Orbs. So they're going to drastically change the way we interact with them and what their uses are and how they're obtained, basically, in order to change this. The way they intend to achieve this is actually really simple. Most of the metacrafts that cost Exalted Orbs are now going to cost Divine Orbs, and the Divine Orb recipe where you vendor a 6-link is just being removed from the game and replaced with a 20 Orb fusing recipe. This will result in a massive increase in the demand for Divine Orbs, but a massive decrease in the supply of Divine Orbs. The TLDR here is that the Exalted Orbs and Divine Orbs are swapping roles, kinda like when the girl on the outside wants a turn in the middle. So claiming that Divine Orbs are going to cost more than 200C in the future is a very big claim, and I don't think that the explanation I've given so far really explains to you why I think this is going to be the case. So what we need to do is delve into two different subjects today. We need to first compare the role of Exalted Orbs in 3.18 and earlier to the role that Divine Orbs are going to play in patch 3.19 onwards, and then we're going to have to compare the Chaos to Exalt ratio, or the Chaos to Divine ratio as it's going to be known going forward. So the first thing that I want to discuss is how basically the base functionality of a Divine Orb is far more necessary than the base functionality of an Exalted Orb. Exalted Orb slams are not at all a necessary part of Path of Exile. When you think about an item that has 5 mods on it and it has an open affix slot, you usually solve this by crafting a 6th modifier into that slot. If it has 2 open slots, you're crafting on one side, but you're going to leave the other side of the item open in case you change your mind in the future, or in case you want to resell the item and replace it. If you have a 3-mod item and you're crafting a 4th mod on, this is an item that you're planning on upgrading in the future anyway, and if there was really a good mod that you wanted to get from an Exalted Orb and it really mattered to you, you probably would have gone out of your way to get an item that had that stat on it in the first place. The reason why Divine Orbs are necessary, however, is because there are a lot of high-value uniques that have very wide but important role ranges that you need to use a Divine on them in order to derive value from them. So let's use the example I put here. You have an Ashes of the Stars that's low rolled, and in the future, let's say it's worth 40 Divine Orbs or 40 Exalted Orbs, if that helps you understand it better. And a well-rolled Ashes is worth 60 Divines or 60 Exalts, right? Now, in this case, it's logical to buy the low-rolled Ashes and then throw 10 Divines at it until you get a roll that is usable for your character. Your character doesn't need a max-rolled Ashes, but there may not be any on the market that are priced appropriately for what you need. So it makes sense, mathematically, logically, right? The smart play here is to buy the low-rolled one and throw Divines at it. But the thing is that without throwing Divines at it, this 40 Divine Orb Ashes of the Stars is kind of useless. It's unusable to a lot of builds. So what I'm explaining here is that these high-value items can't sell, or can't rather be worn by characters until you throw Divine Orbs at them. That didn't really exist when it came to Exalted Orbs. There was no such thing as an item that required an Exalted Orb slam in order to be usable. So Divine Orbs, the basic function of them, just has a much higher demand for their use than Exalted Orbs did. So when you consider that Divine Orbs are replacing the role Exalted Orbs previously played, their inherent demand is a lot higher. So this already demands a much higher price than what Exalted Orbs would have. But this gap is going to grow further and further apart, and this is another example right here. So casual and mid-tier players have been feeding the Exalted Orb supply by doing the Exalted Shard recipe. The Exalted Shard recipe is basically Chaos recipe, but with influenced items. You hand in a full set of influenced items of the same type. I think you get 2 Exalted Shards. Now, this contributes to the amount of Exalted Orbs that exist on the servers and drives their prices down, basically. That's not going to exist when Divine Orbs are taking the place of Exalted Orbs. Exalted Orbs are keeping their old recipe, Divine Orbs are losing their recipe. So this extra supply of Divine Orbs is not going to exist. Now think about the amount of divination cards that exist for Exalted Orbs. There are a whole handful. I can't even name them all because I can't remember them all. There's just a bunch, right? I would probably say between 5 and 10 off the top of my head. I think Divine Orbs only have the Sephiroth. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm pretty sure Divine Orbs only have a single div card. This is kind of a problem if you think about it, because again, the amount of divination cards that exist feeding the Exalted Orb supply is a lot higher than what it's going to be next patch, when Divine Orbs are taking the role of Exalted Orbs and there aren't as many divination cards feeding into the Divine Orb supply. This is going to make Divine Orbs a lot rarer comparatively to what Exalted Orbs are, which is important considering that they are serving the same functionality, that they're being used in the same Metacross and all that sort of stuff. So this is supposed to replace this other thing, but it's much rarer, and that's going to drive the prices up even further. Now, the last and possibly the most important thing to talk about when we're making the comparison between the old functionality of Exalts versus the new functionality of Divines is Harbinger. Harbinger has been heavily farmed by players of all levels of skill in order to farm raw Exalted Orbs by farming Exalted Shards. That's no longer going to exist. We don't have Divine Orb Shards. The type of content you could farm Divine Orbs directly from, namely Ambush, they don't give you Divine Orbs anymore. They give you just this 20 Orb Fusing recipe. So this is like a huge part of the supply of our Exalted Orbs that's no longer going to exist. So this is just going to drive the price of Divine Orbs even further up in the future. So to wrap up this part of the video, basically, despite having these identical baseline drop rates, Divine Orbs in the future are going to be much rarer and much more in demand than Exalted Orbs have been historically. I know we're saying that Divine Orbs kind of going to replace the functionality of an Exalted Orb, but I think they're going to have this whole higher level tier of rarity that we're not going to think of this as a glorified $100 bill, probably closer to like a $200 bill. I think Divine Orbs are going to be not just a little bit more expensive than Exalted Orbs in all the same situations, I think they're going to be a lot more expensive than Exalted Orbs. Now, the other thing that determines the price of Divines or Exalt in the past is the Chaos to X ratio. This is going to become the Chaos to Divine Orb ratio going forward, and we can look at previous leagues as an indicator of how this ratio is going to look. Here you have a graph showing the price of Exalted Orbs in past leagues. You can see that most of the data points on this graph after Exalted Orbs stabilize are between 100 and 175C. I see no logical or mathematical reason why Divine Orbs are going to exist on the same graph. Divine Orbs are probably going to be above 200C, just based on this information alone. Compared to the value, I guess, of Exalted Orbs in Arch Nemesis or Expedition League, where they were kind of peaking at 175, Divine Orbs are going to be much rarer, and they're going to be much more in demand. So why would they have the same or a lower price than 175C? There's just no way. Unless there is information that has not yet been revealed, it's entirely possible they rebalance drop rates, like a Kalandra shits out currency, or this whole thing about item rarity affecting currency drops maybe ends up causing group play to crash the currency economy. I don't know, right? But based on all the information we currently have available to us, we have no reason to believe that Divine Orbs should exist on this graph. They're going to be way off the charts, if anything. I don't think it's very unreasonable to expect that in a kind of extreme league, so kind of like the Arch Nemesis or Expedition equivalents for Divine Orbs, that Divine Orbs could see a peak of 300C somewhere down the line. I don't think GGG is going to necessarily let that happen due to kind of like the player psychology part of this. Now, of course, it doesn't really matter. Like, the value is sorted out by the economy, and it doesn't really matter to the user whether an Exalted Orb is worth 100C or 200C, but some players feel like it does matter. Like, there are a lot of people who were saying, back in Heist League that I remember on Reddit, people were saying, the low cost of Exalted Orbs is saving this league for me. There was this mentality that because Exalts were cheap, players believed they could buy more items. This absolutely wasn't true. It just meant that something that normally cost 10 Exalts was maybe worth 30 Exalts, but in the player's mind, well, usually I own 20 Exalts, now I own 100 Exalts, like, this is saving the league for me. It's not really going to matter in the grand scheme of things, but I think that GGG knows it does matter to players for some reason, so I think GGG might step in and might try and prevent Divine Orbs from ever hitting anywhere close to 300C, but it is a possibility. If they just sit back and do nothing, and they release a league that doesn't give us a lot of access to raw currency drops from the league mechanic, Divine Orbs 300C, that's a very, very easy possibility. It's not even hard to imagine when you consider everything that I've laid out in this video. Now, just to wrap up this point, if you look at the Chaos Orb to Divine Orb ratio, most of it just comes down to the demand for Kirak mods, and the Kirak mods this league are not that great. So, Beyond is gone, okay, it's not on the map device, and even if it were, it probably wouldn't be worth what it used to be in the past. Deli mirrors are not on the map device, so And that's another like big source of Chaos Orb demand, completely gone. Essence is likely being lowered to 2 monsters from 3, which is why it's having its cost reduced down to 2 Chaos Orbs. Could be wrong about this, I could be misremembering. But basically this is going to artificially lower the demand from Chaos Orbs because you're able to spend your Chaos Orbs slower when playing with Essence on the map device. I also think that because Essence is such an easy one to take for so many people, it's going to dissuade them from taking the higher cost ones. Like, there is an opportunity cost when you pick a Curate map mod. You can only pick Legion or Essence, and Essence is 2C, Legion is like 6 or 7, right? Essence is the play probably for a lot of people. I think a lot of people like doing these like low investment strategies. They seem to have very visual returns. Like, you know what you're getting with Essences, whereas with Legion, like, you're counting your splinters, and there's like a bunch of raw currency in there, and you're like, did I drop this in the map, or did I drop this from the sergeants? I can't remember. So it kind of becomes a little more muddy there. I think casual players are definitely going to prefer Essence, and because Essence doesn't spend a lot of Chaos Orbs, low Chaos Orb demand. Another thing is that Expedition is like terribly fucking weak. There's no point paying all this money for Expedition if you're taking all the Expedition stuff on your Atlas tree, because you may as well just pay a very small premium and get a Scarab, which is going to juice the hell out of your Expedition. So I think Expedition on the map device is pretty much dead on arrival. It's only really there for self-found players, most likely. If you like this video, give me a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see all you guys tomorrow.